Everybody, Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of the Monsters Den. We have in the co-captain's chairs today, Mr. Craig Kaminski.
Woo!
And the king himself, Chris Allo. What's going on, gents?
Woo! What's going on, fellas?
Good evening, guys. How are you?
Doing good.
Doing good.
Yeah, it's funny. We got to talking recently about Lucio Fulci, and I could have sworn we had done a Fulci episode in the past, but we never actually did. We mentioned a few of his movies here and there.
Did we do a top 10 Argento or no?
We did a top 10 Argento.
I know you guys did that.
But we did like way back, we did like a Italian horror icons show, and we talked about like a couple Fulci films, a couple Argento films, and a couple Bava films, but we never did a full episode dedicated to the great Italian director Lucio Fulci. So here we are today. We've each put together our list of 10 favorites. I know a few of us have been rewatching some of them over the last week. Some I've seen many, many times. And so it'll be interesting to see what we've all come up with. He's got a shitload of movies, but I think
he really does.
It's a lot of shitters though, right?
Yeah, there were some shitters, but there's some great stuff. I mean, the 10 that I have, I genuinely like. I was thinking about an hour ago, I'm like, Jesus, if you're a director and you could direct like 10 movies that somebody likes, that's fucking amazing.
That is pretty good. Yeah, that is.
And he had a pretty sweet spot from 79 to 82.
Oh God, what a run!
So he has at least 6-7 movies that are pretty good. In that short span.
Yeah.
So,
and a lot of different genres he covers too, which is interesting,
which was surprising. I didn't know
a bit over the years. Yeah. So with all that being said, Craig, I'll have you kick us off with your number 10.
Okay, thanks. My number 10, I went with one of his later period ones, possibly the latest one. This one's called Voices from Beyond, and it's from 1991. Now, the pull quote that's on the poster for this, when I was watching this, I was pulling up what the poster looked like. The pull quote, like from a critic there, actually says, "The last good Fulci film." So that's kind of faint praise, I thought. And like you guys, I'm sure like you guys had said, you had watched some other ones which weren't quite some of his best. But this one was decent, I thought. A basic plot: a man dies, and his ghost speaks to his daughter to help solve his murder. And meanwhile, his corpse is gradually rotting more and more. First, it looks normal in his suit and tie and the casket, and then it just gradually gets worse and worse. And with the recurring theme of maggots, as we see in almost all these maggots, gradually all over the body. There's a few good zombie scenes which look very similar to some of the makeup and look from some of his prior movies, and some good nudity from the main blonde actress. Her name escapes me, but I think there were only there was two different women who were nude, and that both were pretty good. So that was enough for me to give it at my number 10. So it's Voices from Beyond.
Nice. Yeah, I didn't have that one. Otherwise, I would have. I have it in the garage. I didn't pull it.
All right, Chris.
All right, my number 10 is one that Craig just mentioned. I think Craig thinks it's a shitter. Listen, it's not great, but I think it's fun. It's kind of his Hitchcock homage because it stars Fulci, directed by Fulci, and it's Cat in the Brain. And it's basically he plays himself, reading from the back, the director driven insane by his own movies, and it's got a bunch of scenes that are cut in, from his filmography. It's really gory. I mean, it's not a great movie, but it's fun, and that's why I put it at my number 10. Actually, this is the only one that I have on DVD that I did not rebuy on Blu-ray. So I guess I need to rebuy this one, but I do think it's pretty good.
Yeah, a lot of gore in that. I mean,
a lot of gore.
Woman's head being sawn off with.
I it's totally ridiculous. But
I think most of these films are totally ridiculous.
Yeah.
Right?
Popping eyeball.
yeah, and Fulci is even directing himself. He's not the greatest actor, but it's fun. But you know, he guest stars.
He's in like all his movies.
Oh yeah,
He was like a Hitchcock.
Yeah, what's like a Hitchcock? Put himself in lots of these movies.
Yep.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
All right, before I divulge my number 10, I do want to show off the brand new Monsters Den.
Yes, look at that
T-shirt, which is available in the link below. All right, so check it out. Collect them all. You know how it goes, right? It's
absolutely
cool. It's got the serial
available in all sizes.
Yeah, absolutely, all sizes.
Nice. There we go.
Ship everywhere. So there you go. All right, I'm gonna pull a mulligan, pull a Pardo for my number 10 because I had 10 and I realized I left one out and I was like, do I leave it out of the list or I just tie for number 10? You're gonna get tie for number 10. So we're gonna go with Manhattan Baby.
Nice.
Which is just totally bonkers, off the wall, Egyptian amulet, come back to New York and all sorts of havoc ensues. And here reanimated corpses and animals and all sorts of strange things and a lot of close-up eye shots. And yeah, it's just absolutely nuts. Gore aplenty. So I wanted to include that. And then also this is one from 1969. I only just saw this for the first time recently, but it's a really cool giallo film called Perversion Story.
Yes.
Really good cast in here. A lot of familiar faces from a lot of the giallo films throughout the 70s. And yeah, it's just, it's another one of these kind of convoluted stories and who's the killer. And you got, a woman who seems to have like a doppelganger. Is she dead? Is she not? Who's this other? It's really interesting, kind of, like I said, complicated story, but in the end, it'll keep you guessing, like, kind of what's actually going to happen. And it's a really good, tense thriller that if you like the giallo films, I think you really dig this. I think Fulci was really underrated doing these giallo films. And I think he has a couple really, really good ones in his filmography. So here you have it. Time for number 10, Manhattan Baby and Perversion Story.
Nice.
Is Perversion Story the one that's called One on Top of the Other or something like that?
Yeah, it's got some other weird name. Yeah,
I tried to watch that. I couldn't find it.
Yeah, I think, it definitely has a couple different names, but yeah, Perversion Story is kind of a weird name for it because it doesn't really
that perverted.
Yeah, it's really not, but it's but it's cool. It's definitely cool. So, back to you, Craig.
Okay, my number 9 is one I just, which most of these I just watched recently. This is called The Psychic from 1977 with Jennifer O'Neill, who's looking great in it, famous from Summer of 42 and eventually Scanners a few years later. Yeah, there she is, gorgeous. Basic plot is her as a little girl sees her mother killed, commit suicide, and later as an adult she starts having visions that relate to a murder. She finds a skeleton walled up in her house, her husband is arrested, and she also has visions that predict her own death and a murder. It's not very graphic. I mean, there's a few bloody scenes, and I think it's a decent enough straight mystery.
Yeah.
A little bit different for what he was doing as around that period. Although in that period he was doing westerns and he'd even done some sexy Italian comedies and things like that. So another little different for him. One interesting thing that I noticed from watching more of these movies was that the mother's death scene in the very beginning, where she jumps off a cliff, is exactly like the end of one of the movies that we'll talk about, the end of the movie that we'll talk about later. Exactly, just with different people. One's with a woman and the other one's with a man, but the exact same thing happens. Jumps off the cliff and the face like hits some rocks in slow motion.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yep.
When I saw it the first time, I was like, oh, that's pretty graphic. And then when I saw it again in a movie that was actually 5 years prior to that, I was, he did it again.
Yeah, so, he definitely was not above reusing some of his own shots for sure. Yeah, because I noticed that in a movie I'll mention a little later as well.
But again, a decent enough mystery, and if someone is averse to heads being cut off and eyes popping out and things like that, this movie might be might be a little bit more their speed. So
it's definitely his most stylish film, I think, as far as like mainstream looking film. I would agree. Yeah. And this is not a gore fest. This is not a horror film. It's just a really good mystery thriller. And it's a good one. It's a good one.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I always thought I think it's only called The Psychic in the States. I think everywhere else, the title, which I always thought would be a great name for a heavy metal album, was Murder to the Tune of 7 Black Notes. I was always like, God, I think that's a fucking great name for a metal album, but nobody's ever used it.
It's always,
and that is a great Giallo title, right?
Yes.
Yeah. It sounds like the Red Queen kills 7 times or so.
Yeah, exactly.
True. Yeah.
These similar titles.
Yep. Cool. All right, Chris, back to you.
Yeah, I mean, so many of these have alternate titles. I'll throw some of them out as I remember them, because I'm a huge Fulci fan, and I have a shit ton, probably at least 50, maybe more, of different Lucio Fulci original movie posters from around the world, and that's when you would really start to pick up, like, oh, this one was called this in this region, and this one was called this region, because this was called The Eye of the Evil Dead in America, which, of course, to cash in on the Evil Dead. This is the DVD. I have the Laserdisc somewhere, and this is the triple disc Blu-ray. And yeah, it's a possession movie with Christopher Connolly from 1990, The Bronx Warriors, and that little fucking annoying kid Bob from House by the Cemetery.
Oh God,
that I'm sure we'll get to a little later. But yeah, it's stupid, it's goofy, but there's some good gore. And it amazes me that this movie did get released theatrically in the States. I think it was 21st Century releasing under Eye of the Evil Dead. But yeah, some of his other movies, one in particular, still blows my mind, did not, which we'll get to later. But yeah, it's my number 9.
I will say Manhattan Baby is a terrible, terrible name.
Oh, awful! Like like to me, I'm like, okay, like I expect. Like it just hearing that title, I'm like, okay, so it's about a rich family that has a kid in the city. I mean, but
sounds like a Woody Allen movie.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's just it doesn't work.
No. All right, my number 9 is from 1981. He released a whole bunch of movies in 1981. This is a reimagining of the classic Edgar Allan Poe tale, The Black Cat, starring Patrick McGee from A Clockwork Orange. You got Mimsy Farmer in this. In fact, basically everybody in this film you have seen in other Italian horror thriller films for the most part. And really good because unlike other versions of the Black Cat story, the Black Cat plays a huge role in this film. Black Cat is in like
the murderer.
Every scene. Again, it's as with a lot of these films, the whole storyline as you're going through it, a little convoluted, but it's a lot of fun. And every time the cat attacks, it's just great. There's a good amount of blood and gore in here, and the ladies are attractive in here. And it's another kind of at the end of the film, it's a whodunit, just like a lot of these type of films are, and very entertaining and very well done. I think didn't do that well though. I think this came out at a time where he had those other high profile films, so this one kind of gets forgotten, but it's very
lost on the shelf. And that one did get released theatrically in America.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely did not get the attention that other movies like Zombie and Gates of Hell definitely did.
Yeah, but it's a good one. This is a really good Arrow Blu-ray. I mean, Arrow does great stuff. I think I've got a bunch of Blue Underground, and Arrow did a bunch of these. So yeah, it's a good one. If you haven't seen it, very good. Black Cat.
And animal lovers will love that the cat is really the mastermind.
Yeah.
These
Little cat. All right, Craig, number 8.
My number 8, I'm going with Lizard in a Woman's Skin from 1971. This is a giallo that Mr. Fulci had done. This is with Florinda Balkan, the luscious Anita Strindberg. We got music by Ennio Morricone in it, so which is really, really cool to hear. Again, basic plot: a woman hallucinates about killing and stabbing another woman. She's witnessed by 2 hippies, and just one of which is comes trying to kill her. It's like, did she do this? Did she imagine it? Was she, tripping balls when this happened? We don't know. Plenty of good nudity and bloody stabbings, very colorful, a lot of trippy visuals because of the time that it came out. I have it ranked just a little bit lower in my count, only because I think there were so many other giallos of that period that are much better. And I just think that I don't know if that was, maybe it wasn't his forte. I don't know, where you have movies from just right around that time period, Bird with the Crystal Plumage and Cat o' Nine Tails and Strange Vice of Mrs. Ward. They all came out around the same time. And I just think those have a much more coherent story and more interesting than those. So that's why I have this one ranked a little bit lower in mine, but it's still an enjoyable movie if you're a giallo fan. So yeah, Lizard in a Woman's Skin.
Cool. All right, Chris.
All right, my number, I guess is this 8?
Yeah.
Is the other giallo that Lucio Fulci made with Florinda Balkan at the time, Don't Torture a Duckling. He made the 2 movies with Florinda Balkan, but they're fairly different from one another. This one's different from most giallos in that it's rather than being in the big city, it's out in a little tiny, very rural backwater town in Italy, and all these children are being murdered. And of course, Fulci's obsession with ducks and Donald Duck, which would really come out in New York Ripper, he first flirted with in Don't Torture a Duckling. But there's a good amount of gore, like 1 or 2 nude scenes, one of which is pretty crazy, and definitely a bit of a head scratcher. You're like, all right, well, who the fuck who is the killer? I don't know. It's definitely different in that there's not the black glove, and this one doesn't have the awesome prog rock score that like Lizard in a Woman's Skin does, and that most giallos do. But it's still really good, and I think it's one of his better movies.
It's got Barbara Boucher in it,
right? Who's gorgeous. So yeah,
it's a good one. More on that in a bit. I'm gonna go on my number 8, The Psychic, which Craig already talked about. I like it. Good, stylish mystery thriller. Yeah, Jennifer O'Neill's great in it, and she wanted to do other stuff. It's amazing that she did a film with him, right? When you really think about it, because she was such a high profile actress. But I forget this other dude's name. The other guy, this is him right here. I forget his name, but he's great in this film. Whatever this actor's name is, he appears in a lot of other films too. But yeah, it's a good one. My number 8. Back to you.
My number 7 is Don't Torture a Duckling that Chris had just mentioned. Barbara Boucher, Florinda Balkan, and I agree wholeheartedly with what Chris had said. It's the one, right? It's a very violent scene involving Florinda and Balkan, and like the mob mentality of the movie, where the townspeople assume that the weirdo gypsy woman is the one who has killed these young boys, and they just basically lynch her in a cemetery. But Barbara Boucher, great scenes with her. Where were these women when I was like 12, whatever, or she says, change my spare tire, I'll give you money or a kiss. And it's like, but then she turns out to be the one who helps out the reporter to solve the crimes and everything. So, but I like this one. This one was a good, enjoyable movie. This is from 1972.
Yeah, the reveal at the end, I think, is great in this film.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And again, the final scene with this, when the killer is revealed, you'll see, if having watched The Psychic, then that it's like, yep, it's the exact, very similar.
That's right. Cool. All right, Chris.
Okay, so my next one, we already went over, Lizard in a Woman's Skin. Fulci's next giallo. I like this one better because this one has more nudity and more sex and a better soundtrack. And it's and it's just like it's a real head scratcher, because you're like, wait, there's these hippies and they're having sex and it's a three-way and there's lesbianism and
Is she
everybody's on
dreaming? Is she not
acid.
dreaming? It's like,
You're like, what the fuck? So this one I think is a little more of a typical giallo than Don't Torture a Duckling. But yeah, they're both good, but very different from one another.
yeah, I agree. I agree. All right, my number 7 is I like this one a lot. I could have ranked higher, but I mean the rest of these are really, really good. House by the Cemetery. Always be wary when you buy a new home out in the country and it's an old house, because you never know what's living in the basement or in the walls, right?
Dr. Freudstein.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just wacky, fun Fulci at his very best. It's gory. It's got like, these undead creatures. I mean, he's just, a lot of the films around this time period are kind of similar with the monsters and stuff like that. But this is just good fun, and it's got a really good cast. It's got Catriona McCall, right, who's excellent. Yeah, I like this a lot.
It's got that little bastard Bob.
Oh.
Yeah. Bob.
I've got an original Vestron video VHS of a US VHS of House by the Cemetery, and the movie, it's kind of tough to follow anyway. But famously, the VHS, when they did the transfer, they mixed up the middle reels. They got them in reverse. So you watch like reel 3 and then you watch reel 2. So it makes it even more confusing if you had seen the VHS as a kid.
Well,
some of these films are just pretty crazy.
Yeah.
My number 6 is House by the Cemetery. So, and again, it's I kept thinking this was one I had seen, I saw before some years ago, and one of the notes that I wrote down here is I said I remembered it being better. I don't know. I thought there were obviously there's 5 more that I thought were better, but I don't remember. I must have thought this was better than it was. But yeah, the voice dub of Bob is just atrocious. And the whole time I'm watching it, I was going, man, they put like a black kid's voice or something. Over with Bob, or anything.
Yeah, it sounds weird, and
or even and then I'm watching this going, why is his name Bob? Why isn't it Bobby or Robbie or something like that? The kid's like 5. Who the hell calls a 5-year-old just plain Bob? It's and I was like watching this again and then trying to figure out the plot, with Dr. Freudstein is living in the basement. This is the poor Anne, the babysitter, gets decapitated.
Yeah.
There's definitely some gooey stabbings and a lot of the throat rippings and that. So it's got the trademark.
It has I always love the knife through the back of the throat.
That's great. Yep.
That's a great kill.
Yeah, there's definitely some good scenes in that, but then there's some stretches where nothing happens. So it's or that they're developing the plot, but still an enjoyable movie. I mean, I did like it though.
Plus, it's got Dagmar Lysander in it, right? Who she was veteran of lots of really cool giallo films. Always good to see her.
Yeah, she was in The Black Cat, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's got. I think I've seen over the last couple of months. I've seen at least 4 or 5 films with her, and she pops up everywhere.
Yeah, a lot of these people I had noted. It's like, hey, that guy looks familiar.
She plays a big role. And you ever see Puzzle? Puzzle's really good.
I have that bookmarked in my Tubi.
That's good. She's in that. Yeah, it's good. Cool. All right, Chris.
All right, my number 6. I just got the 4K not too long ago. Is also House by the Cemetery. Not my favorite of the Fulci classics, because it's kind of slow in spots. It's got some good gore, but listen, it's not a fucking zombie movie. I mean, there's one zombie, and it takes forever to fucking see him. He's at the end of the movie. So yeah, not my favorite, but Catriona McCall is great in it. Paolo Malco, who was a New York Ripper, comes back in this, and yeah, Bob is fucking annoying, but you could do a lot worse than House by the Cemetery.
Mommy.
Oh, what? Where are we?
It's so bad. The more I think about it, the more I'm like, yeah, every scene where he
Yeah.
shows up, I'm just like, oh God, someone please kill this kid, right? You know, it's like, oh, enough. What number are we on? 6?
Yes.
Yeah, all right. Don't Torture a Duckling. Just rewatched this over the weekend, actually. I hadn't seen it in a while. I picked up the Arrow Blu-ray. Really good. A lot of good special features on this. But yeah, just a really good giallo, I think. I love the ending. I really like the twist at the end, and it's just funny. I don't know. I shouldn't say anything because it's like I'll give the ending away for those who haven't seen it. But yeah, and I like the locale of the film. It's in this kind of like little seaside Italian village, which I think is really cool. And yeah, really good. And we've talked a bit about it already. And just so everybody knows, there are no real ducks in the film. So it has to do with a Donald Duck.
Right. Toy duck, yeah.
So, all right, back to Craig.
All right, my number 5, and I saw this for the just saw this for the first time fairly recently. I am going with The New York Ripper from 1982, and I will say I really enjoyed the movie, but there's some there's some parts in that.
There's some sleaze.
But well, I mean, it really shows you. I'm going to assume this was filmed like probably in '81, but it really shows you the sleazy parts of New York City at the time, or wherever parts that this was filmed at. Very authentic looking. I guess that you don't see as much now. But burnt out detective and a college professor team up to find a serial killer who uses a duck's voice to taunt the police and the victims. Some of the highlights of the gore. A girl is gutted in a car on the I guess it's the Staten Island ferry. The detective's hooker girlfriend is basically flayed and slowly. I mean, it's the ending where when you see the killer is shot in the face, I think in the side of his face or something, and it's very graphic. But the scene that disturbed me the most is with where one of the victims, who's like a nympho, goes to some sleazy bar, and she sits there with these scuzzy guys, and the one guy takes his shoe off and puts his bare foot in her lady parts. And oh God, I mean, I'll just tell you this. I mean, Craig Kaminski hates feet. Hates.
Good to know.
Hates. So I was watching this for the first time, and it's they had already shown some gory things in this, and it's like, oh, whoa, that's just, oh boy. Then they show this part with the foot, and I'm not kidding. I was like, ah! I was just grossed out.
Completely disgusted, right?
I was just totally feet skeeved me out. So it's when I saw that part, then of course I was describing it to my wife, and she's like, no, just stop. I don't want to watch it. So it's. Oh, it was just I think that's got to be like the nastiest part I've seen in any of these movies, and it didn't even involve like blood, guts, heads flying off or anything. It was feet.
It was the foot job that disturbed
foot
Craig.
Foot in lady parts. Oh God.
Yeah, the New York Ripper is the got to take a shower afterwards film, right?
Oh, yeah.
Feel just dirty.
It's sleazy. Yeah.
But it was, but it's still,
it's fun. Right?
It's well done sleaze for sure.
After all that, when I paused the movie and had to walk around the room a little bit, and came back to it. It's still, it's a decent enough movie. I wasn't really sure who the killer was until you get towards the end and everything. So it's a for what it is, it's a good whodunit, just with some really sick parts in it.
I mean, would you guys say that New York Ripper is probably the most intense giallo ever? Because really, it is.
Yeah, I would think. I mean, it's definitely one of those. I watched it 3 times when I got the 4K disc.
Yeah.
And I was like, Jesus, is it a giallo or is it a slasher? It's a tough one. It's a tough one. But right. If we're going, if we're going Giallo, yeah, it's gotta be the most graphic and the sleaziest, I think, of all the Giallos. And there's some sleaze in the subgenre, but this one takes all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely, if you're gonna look for some of the Fulci films on 4K, it's definitely worth getting. It looks great, considering that the film is not one of those films that you watch and say, "Oh my God, this is a gorgeously choreographed film."
It's not Avengers Endgame.
No.
But, yeah, if you want to see the sleaze in all its 4K glory, including the finger fucking or the toe fucking, this is the one for you. Sorry, Craig. Close your ears.
All right, Chris, back to you.
My next one, I've only bought it twice, but I'm pretty sure I already pre-ordered the Blu-ray. And I know I talked about it with Craig recently, but the DVDs are in my exploitation section, so that was already packed up. I couldn't get it. 1980s Contraband, which is basically Lucio Fulci's version of The Godfather. It's an Italian crime film, but done Lucio Fulci style, with lots of blood, lots of rapes. It's mafia crime families snuffing each other out, and there's a lot of action, and it's fast paced, and it's definitely one of those ones that, it's from Fulci's peak era, but really like unknown. Like nobody ever talks about it. I don't know if it ever even came out on DVD in the States. I have a Dutch DVD and I think a British or German DVD.
And were those called The Smuggler?
Yes.
Ones that you have? Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, and I'm 99% sure I pre-ordered it on Blu-ray just recently. So hopefully that'll be coming out soon. But yeah, that's a fun one. And one that a lot of people, don't ever see. Craig and I talked about it recently, and I was like, "Yeah, you're gonna like it." I'm like, "But be forewarned, it's a little rapey."
No rapey.
But they don't show a lot of that rape. The woman's screams are the worst part. They don't actually show the too much. I mean, you know what's going to happen.
You know what's going on. I mean, you don't need to.
It's heavily implied. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
All right, my number 5 is New York Ripper. Quack, 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 quack. For those of you who are wondering what I'm doing there, every time the killer calls the police or leaves a message, he ends the call with a fucking bizarre, but it adds to the wackiness factor of this film.
Which is so off-putting because the movie has so much sex and violence and nudity. And then you've got the killer who's making fucking duck noises. You're like, what?
And don't they have to kind of like explain in the last 5 minutes of the movie what the duck part was all about?
Yes.
Because it really, you're watching it going, why is he doing this duck thing? And it's almost like they finished filming and then had to throw in an extra scene and say, we got to explain why this guy was doing that.
There is a reason. It all gets explained.
I was going to say, without giving it away, because I've seen this movie a ton of times, and I guess I had just sort of kind of forgotten the reason for the duck noises until I watched the 4K, and I was like, oh my God, that's right. Because once they explain the ending with the duck thing, the movie is so dark and bleak, but then once they explain the duck thing, it makes it even worse. You're like, for fuck's sake, really?
Daddy, why aren't you picking up the phone?
Don't give it away, because it's so bleak. You're like, oh Christ, you're breaking my heart.
Yeah, right. Totally downer, right?
But this is the one. This is the one of all of these movies, and you guys nailed it. I mean, this thing was shot, in the early '80s when New York City was the king of sleaze. And 42nd Street was the busiest place for movie theaters in the world. There were more movie theaters in 42nd Street than any other place in the world. But it blows my mind, absolutely blows my mind, that New York Ripper did not get released in America. I'm like, how the fuck is that possible? House by the Cemetery got released in theaters, and Black Cat made it to theaters, and all these other ones and other movies like even Pieces came out in theaters in America. But how the fuck did this? It says New York right in the title.
All about New York.
All about New York. I mean, this thing would have made a killing on 42nd Street. I don't understand.
And most of the people are speaking English in that, right? I mean, I mean, it's not like some of the other movies where there's like one person who's speaking English and then everyone else is speaking Italian.
Right. I mean, yeah, there was an English dub created for it. I don't know. I mean, I had read somewhere once where somebody actually said, it was so violent, and by the time distributors were supposedly looking at it, that it was sort of after the peak of all the slasher craze of the early 80s. But still, I think this would have done something, I think, in the city. But yeah, it just blows my mind that this didn't come out here in the States, but yet so many other so much other Euro trash did get released in theaters in the early 80s.
Yeah,
go figure.
But yeah, this is my number, whatever the hell this is, 4.
5 or 4.
Right? Is it right? Yeah, this is my 4.
I think I just went. We're coming to you after Craig.
Oh, all right. Well, fuck it. All right. So Craig, you're.
I'll do. My 4 is Contraband from 1980. The Italian, the Godfather. Fabio Testi is the name of the guy who's the main character. He's also in one of Fulci's 70s Western movies called 4 of the Apocalypse, which I tried to watch until I saw that it was edited, and then I had to stop. Yeah, so I couldn't continue it. It was okay. But anyhow, Contraband, really good. A Naples smuggler takes revenge on rival gangs following the assassination of his brother. A lot of good killings in this. Mostly shootings and in almost slasher movie style, even though it's a different genre with the graphicness of the mob hits and everything. The only thing that I thought was maybe you guys too, all these great shootings and graphic and everything, but then when you get to the final part where the hero kills the bad guy, the final bad guy at the end, that's like the worst one. Nothing happens. It's almost like they ran out of budget or something. He shoots him in a back alley or something, and it's like not in a spectacular fashion. So that was a little disappointing, but again, solid movie, very enjoyable. And if you like mob movies, this one will fit right in with that. Just it's a lot more graphic.
There you go.
Excellent.
All right, Chris, now you're number 4.
All right. So my number 4, New York Ripper. How did this not come out in theaters? I don't know.
Who knows? One of the biggest mysteries, right?
Yeah.
My number 4, Lizard in a Woman's Skin. I like this a lot. It like Craig said, is definitely weird.
Oh yeah.
Man, Anita Steinberg, and like every scene she's in, she's naked. She's so gorgeous, man. From Sweden. I wish she was in the movie more. I mean, it's funny because she's in so many movies and that we've been talking about, by various directors and whatnot. But whenever she's on camera, it's just can't take your eyes off of her. And yeah, there's a lot of weird shit going on. You got the 2 hippies, right, who are like tripping and like, what did they see? I don't know. The one guy's bizarre. It's just, it's a wacky movie, but a really cool ending. And I dig it. I dig it a lot. I think it's his best giallo film, I think. So back to Craig.
My number 3 is I'm going with Zombie or Zombie 2 or whatever from 1979. Boat turns up in New York City with a zombie, kills a cop, zombie ditched overboard. A girl's father owns the boat. They go down to a Caribbean island. She goes down to a Caribbean island with a reporter to find experiments being done, and everything gets quickly out of control. In a nutshell, there it is. And the famous one, probably the most, I'm going to say the most famous scene in probably all his movies, I would say, is the woman with getting a splinter a wood splinter in her eye. It's always brought up in like scary or graphic movie moments, things that you look up on the internet or see on TV. There's a zombie versus shark fight scene, which has to be seen to be believed, which is kind of cool. Considering this is not CGI. This is just some guy with it, and that's not a fake shark either. So pretty cool. The last 20 minutes or so of the movie, it just gets batshit crazy when the zombies are overrunning the island. Final scene of the movie is awesome with the zombies walking across the bridge. I think it's a really cool looking scene the way that it was filmed, because there's cars are driving right underneath, and there's all these zombies there. Really neat looking. So but enjoyable zombie movie, and after Dawn of the Dead, but this is the one that starts his sweet spot, so to speak, of his run from 79 to 82 or so, where Fulci's movies are really at their peak. But very enjoyable movie.
How much money did Fulci have to pay that guy who played the zombie in the water with the shark? That's what I want to know. Who in his right mind would have done that scene?
If I'm not mistaken, I believe that guy was like the shark trainer, if I'm not mistaken. So that's how they got that guy, and they also doped up the shark.
They had to, right? Yeah.
But yeah, I believe that was the shark wrangler, I think they call them with the animals. Because that's a pretty nuts scene.
It's a decent sized shark too. I mean, it's
not.
A,
oh yeah.
I mean, it's. I mean, you could do that now with CGI, I'm sure, with no real problem. But back then, it's hold your breath and
Yeah.
Hopefully, it doesn't lose an arm, right?
Yeah. Right.
All right, Chris, you're number 3. This is the toughest, the top 3 here.
All right, my number 3 has a bunch of different titles. It came out in the UK under City of the Living Dead. It was famously released in the States uncut as The Gates of Hell, but it was originally tested as a Dawn of the Dead tie-in under the title Twilight of the Dead. And it took me years, but I found an original US poster of Twilight of the Dead, but they quickly got hit with a cease and desist from Richard Rubenstein, who was the producer for George Romero, and they had to change the title from Twilight of the Dead to Gates of Hell. But yeah, this is classic Fulci. A priest hangs himself and opens one of the gates of hell in a small New England town. Tons of gore. I remember seeing it as a kid. I must have been 11 years old when the girl vomits up her intestines, and I was like, "Holy shit, this is insane." That was probably 83, 84. So yeah, it was pretty groundbreaking stuff. And yeah, tons of zombies. Doesn't make a ton of sense, but doesn't really matter. Who fuck cares?
It's fun.
It looks great, so
Yeah, my top 3 it could be interchangeable at any time. I really enjoy all 3 of them. I put them in some kind of order. I'm going to go with The Beyond as my number 3. Could be higher. Again, completely nuts, over the top gore, crazy storyline. The special effects are, top notch here too. This is the Grindhouse releasing version. It's got the cool slipcase and stuff like that. I'm sure I'll leave it to Chris to talk more about the film itself, because I know huge fan, but I do like this quite a bit, and it's definitely upper echelon Fulci as far as I'm concerned. Today, number 3. Tomorrow could be number 2, could be number 1. I don't know. Hard to say. Top 3 are all great. Back to Craig.
My number 2 is City of the Living Dead, or Gates of Hell, as Chris had said, from 1980. One of the main actors, Christopher George, I just wanted to say, almost everything he's in, I think he's just really solid. He reminds me of like John Saxon or Robert Forster. No matter what he does, he's Grizzly and Pieces and Enter the Ninja. He's just a good, solid actor, and I liked him. But he's a journalist, and a sort of dead woman team up to fight zombies in Massachusetts, after the priest kills himself. Lots of grabbing the back of the head and squishing
Yes.
brain. I don't know how
Brains.
many people. I don't know how many people get that. You know, the woman in the car where first she starts crying blood, then some spittle, and then it's actual organs are coming. I mean, it's and then the one which actually, when I was watching this, I put on Facebook and say, oh, now watching City of the Living Dead. Pete had replied back and said, oh, get watching your Fulci movies. And right when he said that, it was when the part where a guy is industrial drilled
John
in
Morgan.
the head, and I was watching that. Right.
Great scene. Yeah.
So I mean, it was very graphic, but the plot's a little convoluted, but generally I think it's a pretty it's an enjoyable movie. It's similar in some ways to House by the Cemetery would be similar to this movie, but this one I think City of the Living Dead, Gates of Hell is the more enjoyable of those two movies. So I like this a lot.
Oh yeah.
All right, Chris.
My number 2 is The Beyond that Pete just mentioned a minute ago. It's such a classic. This is another one that's a head scratcher because Zombie and Gates of Hell get released uncut in America and make money, and this came out under the title the Seven Doors of Death, which is actually a pretty good title. I think it's better than The Beyond. But it was cut. They cut all the gore out and get an R rating, and of course it didn't play as well. I don't think it made as much money as the other films, but the uncut version is glorious. I've seen this. I couldn't even tell you how many times theatrically. I remember they got it at the Burns Center in Pleasantville, and I think I saw it 3 times in the same week. It's pretty much considered Fulci's masterpiece, but even he said that plot-wise, it's really more all about the visuals because there's really not a ton of sense in the plot. I mean, long story short, there's in the very beginning of a movie, it's in Louisiana, and there's a warlock who gets murdered by the local town people and bricked up inside a hotel. And 100 years later, Catriona McCall inherits the hotel. And of course, so she goes to reopen the hotel, and she finds out eventually that it's on one of the dreaded gates of hell, and all sorts of weird shit happens. It's basically a haunted house movie with like acid in the face and spiders and of course zombies. And the reason we even got zombies in this movie was there was not supposed to be zombies at all. I was just supposed to have all the other stuff. And apparently the German film distributors, before Fulci made the movie, they said, listen, we'll give you X amount of dollars, but your movies with zombies make a lot of money in Germany. So we're only going to give you this money if you put fucking zombies in this movie. So he's like, okay, zombies in the Beyond it is. So that's why at the end of the movie, there's a whole bunch of zombies walking around because the Germans were paying for it. So he's like, hey, we're putting zombies in.
Come on, zombies down in Louisiana? Yes.
Why not? Totally. It makes total sense. But yeah, it is an unbelievable, I think it's one of my, I know we did the episode. It's one of my favorite horror films of all time. And I think it's definitely holds up as being actually frightening because the plot is just so out there, and there's no comedy, and there's never nothing played for laughs. And it's I think it's a great movie, despite some of the flaws. But yeah, The Beyond, and an unbelievable score by Fabio Frizzi. And I was able I've seen him in concert several times, but one time him and his band came to the States, and they played The Beyond on a movie screen, and him and his band played the score throughout the entire movie, which really was cool. I mean, my wife's not a huge fan of Italian horror, but she like totally dug that because it was so unique. And I mean, they timed it perfectly. I mean, they were not off one bit.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so that was pretty cool.
Catriona is great in that film as well.
Oh yeah, no, she's great. I mean, David Warbeck is great. it's a shame because I talked about this with our buddy Ova, who was always mentioning us. I was like, when Fulci was around, it really wasn't until like almost the end of his life when people were really appreciating his stuff. Like in the 80s, you would go to the horror movie conventions. Nobody was celebrating these movies. Everybody was talking about the new Freddy and the new Jason.
Because Fulci was the crazy Italian director that made all these really gory movies that nobody.
These movies were trash in America. It really wasn't until the 90s when people were like, "Oh, wow, no, this guy, and others did some really great stuff." And it's a shame that it took that a while because there was talk of a Beyond Part 2, and apparently they were going to get Catriona MacColl, David Warbeck, and Fulci, but Fulci and Warbeck both passed away, and they just ran out of time. But it's a shame that this sort of stuff wasn't discovered earlier. I remember going to either the Fangoria convention or Chiller Theater, and like finding the Fulci zombie US one sheets for $4. Twice it happened, and that's because in 1989 or 1990 nobody gave a shit about these movies. Today that's a $400 poster, yeah. But back then it was in the cheapy giveaway box because nobody gave a shit.
Yeah. Weren't you the movie? I mean, not one of my faves, but the Cat in the Brain that you had mentioned. Well, I mean that was made several years before Wes Craven's New Nightmare, and it has a lot of the same things where you have the director in there, yep. And Are My Movies killing people, and that was 4 or 5 years, but nobody knew about this, and everyone kind of thought that even though New Nightmare didn't do very well in the theater, if I recall, but that was sort of well regarded, that it's like, wow, that's a really original idea. Well, here it was done.
Yeah, no, it's true. Yeah, I mean his stuff and a lot of the other European filmmakers did some groundbreaking stuff. It's just Pete, like a lot of music, it just took years and years for people to discover it.
Yeah, John, yeah. Doesn't always happen overnight, unfortunately.
No.
Yeah. All right, my number 2 is Zombie.
Nice.
Really visceral, raw film. One of the best zombie films ever made, in my opinion, and just has all the qualities that are great about his films. And some great scenes. I mean, Craig mentioned perhaps one of the greatest scenes in all of his films. I like this. It's too bad that this film kind of got overshadowed by Romero's films, right? Because to me, it stacks up pretty well against those.
Although Zombie actually, theatrically in America, made more money than Dawn of the Dead.
Really?
Did it actually?
So it technically did not get in the States. I mean, maybe over time, especially like today. But yeah, Dawn of the Dead came out first, and then Zombie came in America, and then Zombie came out first. And the tagline was, if you loved Dawn of the Dead, you'll eat up Zombie. And yeah, Zombie shockingly went on box office rentals, if I'm not mistaken, to make more money than Dawn of the Dead, which is why George Romero fucking hated Zombie.
Oh, I'm sure.
And of course, the title, Dawn of the Dead was Zombie in Europe, yep. And Fulci's Zombie was Zombie 2 in Europe.
Yeah. Were both those movies just like midnight showing type movies, Dawn of the Dead and Zombie, or were they,
I mean, like they
released, or
they definitely got like normal theatrical runs. Okay. I mean, I know certainly Dawn of the Dead did, but then they stuck around for a while as midnight showings. Like I remember, like Dawn of the Dead got released in America in 1979. But if I'm not mistaken, because 78 was the rest of the world. But when I went to go see E.T. in the Bronx in 1982, every weekend at my uncle's house, they were doing Dawn of the Dead every Saturday night. But that was 3 years later. But again, 3 years later, after its original theatrical run. And Dawn of the Dead famously was recut. And I would, if any collectors out there have it, even if you're a weirdo, feel free to message me on Facebook or whatever, because Richard Rubenstein, and I did ask him about this, and he fessed up. Dawn of the Dead was re-released as an R-rated version with as a double feature with Creepshow. And so Rubenstein cut Dawn of the Dead without asking George Romero. And they did an ad campaign, and you could see the newspaper ads, if you Google it. And I asked Richard Rubenstein at a screening of Dawn of the Dead in 3D in New York City. And yeah, he admitted it was a terrible idea because George was really pissed off at him. So much so that they pulled it from theaters because Romero was fucking livid at it. And they still had contracts. They still had to make movies together. So he was like, fuck, I'm trying to make extra money off of Dawn of the Dead, and I pissed off the movie maker that I'm working with. But I would, as a fan, I would love to see the R-rated cut of Dawn of the Dead. I've seen Dawn of the Dead a million times, and I don't know, six, 7 times in theaters, but never the R-rated version. I would love to see that. Now we're totally off, but yeah.
Back onto Fulci, right?
Yeah, back on, yeah.
Our number ones.
Right. My number one was The Beyond, and I really enjoyed this. Just total batshit crazy movie, but in a fun, in a fun way. I mean, it's one star TripAdvisor hotel in New Orleans, and the awful demise of Joe the plumber.
Poor Joe, he gets it bad. And his wife and the kid. Oh God.
And the gooey, the black bathtub with the other, oh God.
And listen, that little redheaded girl, before they even do anything, she's still the scariest kid I ever seen in my life.
Yeah, and Dickie the dog, it's like, oh, the dog is saving the woman. No. Nope. No, but a good movie, and the ending, the very ending scene, I think is really cool looking, where they're on that beach. I guess you're supposed to assume they're like in hell, and it's creepy looking,
yeah.
So as Chris had said, you got the gore, but then there is some scary parts in it too. Spiders and spiders, zombies, dogs, drownings, eyeballs popping out. I mean, this has it all. So my number one is The Beyond from 1981. I really enjoyed this.
Cool. Chris, I think I know what yours is. I thought it was going to be The Beyond. I'm actually pretty surprised.
Yeah. Well, my dishonorable mention, this was on your list, Pete. I rewatched this because I couldn't, when I thought about it, I couldn't really recall the movie that much. And I'm like, well, I know I bought it twice, and I'm like, I know it came out on Blu-ray. Should I rebuy it? Yeah, maybe I should buy it a third time again. And then I rewatched it this weekend, and I fucking hated it. The Black Cat.
Oh, really? Well, I like it too.
I hated it. I was like, oh man. And yeah, to me, Fulci reuses a lot of his shit in this movie, but I'm like, I guess I just sort of expected more, because it was, to coin Craig's term, it wasn't that sweet spot of 1981, after Contraband and Zombie, but before New York Ripper and Gates of Hell. And I just thought it was the stinker of his pack of classics. I just, I didn't like it. So I'm not buying it on Blu-ray. I'm drawing a line in the sand.
All right.
So that was that one I didn't like. But this one is one of my more purchased movie. It was the first Fulci movie I ever saw. I mean, I didn't know who Lucio Fulci was when I rented this in 1982. Here's my original US DVD. Of course, I already had the Laserdisc and the VHS. This was the re-release on DVD. This was the Arrow Blu-ray from a few years later. This was the 2-disc Ultimate Blu-ray. It's the Ultimate Blu-ray. That means I'll never have to buy it again, right?
It's the best.
Wrong, because then there was the Ray-disc Blu-ray. And I'm like, okay, that's it. I'm done. But wait, now there's the 4K So hopefully there's not a 4K Ultimate that I have to buy it again. But if it is, listen, I love this movie so much, I'll do it. I don't give a fuck. It's my between that and Dawn of the Dead, those are my two favorite zombie movies of all time. Definitely,
the curse is real, folks.
it's true. It's terrible. I mean, hell, I have this zombie tattooed on my leg. Yeah, it's one of the greatest. My opinion, one of the greatest horror movies of all time. And as much as I love The Beyond, because this was the first one I ever saw, and I honestly think this one I feel is the better movie because it's got such a simple plot. Like there's nothing you don't understand. There's zombies on the island and don't get bit by the zombie. Yep. And that's it. I mean, it's so simple. Yep. But yeah, so that's my number one.
Yep, I agree. All right, kind of like what you just said, sometimes the first one you saw is the one that sticks with you longest. So the first Fulci film I ever saw was called Gates of Hell at the time, VHS rental, but now City of the Living Dead. I mean, yeah, this has a totally convoluted plot. It doesn't make a hell of a lot of sense, but who cares? It, in my opinion, has some of the best kills out of all his films. I mean, the drill scene is classic. I still to this day get totally creeped out. I remember like it was yesterday sitting, it was like summer break from college in like, I don't know, 84, maybe something like that, 85. I don't remember what year it was. And I was at my then girlfriend's house in Long Island, and it was like a Friday night. We were drinking Coors Lights like it was going out of style. I was drunk off my ass. We went to the video store beforehand. And you remember back in the old days, the video rental stores, the horror section, a lot of the really weird, obscure ones had these giant boxes, big right? Boxes. And I remember that big picture of that zombie looking face on the front, the gates of hell, warning, graphic, this, that, and the other. Like, yeah, I got to get that. Now, not thinking twice. And we watched it like 1 o'clock in the morning, been drinking all night. And I'm watching this film and I'm kind of like, through that alcohol haze. And you're like, all right, this is weird. And then the scene with the chick where she just starts puking up her fucking guts. And I'm just like, wow. You want to run out of the room? Because of course you're so in the bag already. You're like, oh my God, your stomach is in. And I'll never forget it. And I literally, we got done watching that movie and I was like, holy shit, I've never seen anything like that before. It was so extreme. And that for me was the start of accepting films that were that gory and that, because I had never seen anything like it. I mean, really, when you think about it, before Fulci, what other kinds of films did you see here in the States, horror films that were anything like that? Nothing.
I mean, it was really just Dawn of the Dead, and before that, I guess H.G. Lewis.
Yeah, Last House on the Left, or things like that, but not to that.
Yeah, graphic, just full color gore, and just like these scenes of like just extreme, horrific. I'd never seen anything like it before, so that always kind of stands out for me. So even though I watch this now and I'm like, okay, all these years later, it doesn't affect me quite the same way, but I still really get jacked watching it because it brings me back to like all those years ago, right? And sure. And I think it holds up really well, even though it's a crazy ass film. I love the effects, and it's from its time, but first one's always the one you remember the most. So
absolutely,
that's my
always remember your first time.
Yeah, always remember that first time. So there you have it, everybody. Our 10 favorite, in my case 11 favorites, because of course I couldn't leave one of them out, right? Couldn't leave.
I had a couple of dishonorable mentions too, that different from what Chris had said. In the course of watching all these movies, I got to give a whole bunch of them a try, and there were two that one was Conquest from 1983, which is a sword and sorcery movie, and I like sword and sorcery movies, especially ones that, right in 83, that was when a lot of them were coming out. Conan was in 82. And the movie's just fucking stupid. I mean, I really wanted to like this because it was like, oh, Fulci made a Conan type movie. No, it's awful. And the other one being Enigma, spelled with an A in the front. And again, it had a plot that sounded really cool. College kids play a prank on this girl. She ends up getting hit by a car and is in a coma and takes revenge against these these college classmates, and
Sound familiar?
yeah,
Yeah,
and I was
yeah.
like, wow, and I was like, oh, this is kind of like that Patrick Lives
Patrick
Again,
Lives Again, yeah.
which, you know, again, I only saw for the first time a few months ago, but it had none of the fun in that, and none, and also disappointingly, none of the Fulci-isms in it. I mean, the first guy to get killed is killed by a reflection of himself, and he looks at himself in the mirror, and his reflection reaches out and chokes him. That's it. I mean, somebody else another girl gets killed by snails, and she's just covered up with all these like little like snails, but they don't go any. It's not like The Beyond where they're going up their nose, in your ear, up your ass, you know, whatever. They just suffocate her, and it was. I was like, wait, that's it. I'm so unsatisfied with this. So that was just that was kind of disappointing. So those two, Conquest and
yeah, those are both stinkers. My Conquest was always famous because you couldn't really see it well because it was so dark. So on VHS and DVD, it always looked terrible. My buddy Sean bought the Blu-ray, so we sat and watched it, and I'm like, it's cleared up, but it still looks like shit because it literally looks like Fulci shot the movie with like fucking gel all over the camera lens.
Well, I think because he had like a $5 budget, so he wanted it. If you put the gel over it, you can't see how fucking cheap it is.
So it just obscures everything, and it looks like shit. It just looks fucking terrible. And yeah, Conquest is a knockoff of Conan, and Enigma is a knockoff of Patrick, which was famously ripped off so much better by the Italians with Patrick Lives Again. So by the time Fulci ripped it off in like '84 with Enigma, yeah, it's really the pale comparison. And listen, that's what the Italians were famous for, you know, ripping off other movies. I mean, that's what Zombie was. Yep. Zombie ripped off Dawn of the Dead.
Or Bruno Mattei, how many?
Yeah, look at him. He's that guy's got a whole career of ripping off other movies.
Yeah. Well, at least we had a lot.
But Enigma had a cool poster.
Yeah, which I have several of, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a cool poster.
That curse is real, Pete.
Yeah. Just buy it just for that, right? Movie sucks, but the poster's amazing, right?
Oh, The Devil's Honey with the hot broad with a saxophone in her hoo-ha. That's a great poster. I mean, that movie's kind of sucks, but that's a killer poster. I have a couple of those.
Not just one.
He's got a couple. He's got another. I want to watch it, but he has I think a straight Western that's on Tubi called Silver Saddle.
Yeah.
At some point I'd like to watch, but I think that's just a straight, straight Western. So he
did one. He did a bunch of like really low budget, like straight to TV ones. Demonia was one that I remember kind of liking. Had like some weird like possessed nuns in it. That one was pretty good, but a lot of those are kind of. A lot of those other ones are kind of tough. Like House of Clocks was okay.
That's what I was going to say. House of Clocks.
Yeah.
I have that somewhere. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, some of them were pretty rough.
Yeah. No, well, for everybody watching, list your favorite Lucio Fulci films in the comments below. See if your list look anything like ours. We had a lot of the same films, just in a lot of different orders. So as Craig had predicted, we would. So yeah, and if you haven't seen
different number ones,
yeah, that's right. 3 different number ones.
True.
Pretty good.
Any on our list that you haven't seen, please go out and watch them. They're available to be streamed or rented or purchased all over the place. So go check them out. And while you're at it, visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. Check us out on Facebook. We're on Twitter occasionally. I should stop saying the Twitter thing because I really don't do much on Twitter, but we do have a Twitter account. But most importantly, we're here together all the damn time on YouTube. So for Craig Kaminski and Chris Allo, I am Pete Pardo. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more Monster Mania next week. Until then, be good, be safe. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.